Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals here, Santa Monica Studios. U.S. Open is a couple days underway, and now joined on the show by somebody who's been at the event on site, making some time for us here. Reoccurring guest on the show, Gill Gross. Thanks for joining to talk U.S. Open, and we had to get you on video just to clamor the fan base on YouTube because they were just not happy you didn't have any video.
Mitch, it's a pleasure. I'm glad my people really pressured you into putting me on camera, despite my face.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't say why they did want you or didn't want you. I mean, that you said that, not me. But we can start here. There's a lot of storylines at the U.S. Open. You're there, you're covering it. But I want to know the backstory of your origins at the Open, being a ball boy, because that's where it at. You posted that photo with you in the Chorich match way back when. So was that what really got you hooked on just tennis in this tournament? Is, you know, having duties too. You weren't just there as a fan. You were there to work as a kid, as a ball boy back in the day.
Yeah, so first ever tennis match I ever attended, 2009 U.S. Open final, Roger Federer, Juan Martín del Potro. That is a big part. Yeah, that was I don't know that I don't know, it's sentimental, but I kind of want to say that the first match I ever watched live was the best match I've ever watched live to this date. But yeah, so that was kind of the start. Then I become a ball kid in 2013. I do it again in 2014. And then starting last year, I work for my, the first time I'm working for a slam for US Open Radio. So, and I grew up about 15 minutes away from the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. So this is a home. It is my home slam. It has treated me well throughout the years. It certainly means a lot to me.
Yeah. And, I think that just being a native New Yorker, you understand the significance of it. And the fact that I know you were there last year to work your first year, but it does feel full on back. And I know Serena and the retirement tour has a lot to do with it, but the grounds are popping again. I know last year they kind of were, but do you get that sense that we're fully back to this being the true U.S. Open feel?
Yeah, we're back to not being able to move on the grounds and everything moving 2 miles per hour because there's too many people everywhere. But it's great. Like, that's what you love, in all honesty. And you look at the numbers; they continue to set records, attendance records. Night session record last night with Serena. It was also a record on Monday, and that is fantastic to see. The crowds have been really, really good.
Before we get to Serena and what happened last night and that experience, I do want to mention as well, having helped out with the Tennis Bet Show and everything going on there and just paying attention to the Open and majors, and now we're playing best of 5 tennis on the men's side, you really start to see the trend. And I'm as bullish on these young players, Gill, especially these young American players, as anyone. But these 5 setters are so brutal physically and mentally that you almost get the sense, I think hindsight's everything, but experience and having been there before, it's just been huge. So many 5 setters have just come down to the player that's older, wiser, and in a little bit better shape.
Yeah, there's like a lot on the line. So nerve management and certainly the physicality. It's been humid. Yesterday was a little bit more mild, but I'm not sure exactly what results you're referring to. I'm sure a handful, but I was at the Tommy Paul Sebastian Korda match yesterday, and that's a situation where I do favor Tommy physically. Maybe when Paul was 22 years old, it would have been a different story. But at this point, it's clear he's incredibly physical, and he's able to win a 5-setter in the first round over Zapata Miralles, where I think he was feeling a lot of pressure in that match because he was 0-4 at U.S. Open main draws. So that takes 5 sets, but it doesn't destroy him for the next round. He's able to win a 5-setter against Korda.
Yeah, I was looking at Holt and Shelton, those 2 matches in particularly. Yeah. Ben Shelton, who I'm obviously we're all kind of on that train, but watching that match, I'm like, has he ever played a 5-setter before? I would have to think. And then, you're playing someone that's just getting everything back, and it's frustrating. And there's only a couple tournaments, right, that we even play best of 5 anymore. So I always think experience kind of factors in, especially early on out of the gates. Let's talk about Serena Williams. She beat the number 2 seed in the tournament last night, Annette Kontaveit, in 3 sets. And much is going to be made about where we go from here, but just staying in the moment. That was some vintage flashes, and that was the old aging veteran with a couple punches left, not going down without a fight. But I saw a big ace on set point in the first set tiebreaker, and I thought, wow, that was familiar. And then, Gil, I think the other thing that stood out to me was the reset. The classic Serena loses a set, resets, kicks it into high gear in set number 3. To expect her to be where she was at her all-time best is unfair, but I think seeing her fight out there and seeing the crowd lift her is one of those moments that's cool, and it's going to stand the test of time. I think we got to just understand the moment, the weight of it, and appreciate any Serena that we do have left.
Yeah, this was kind of the Agassi-Baghdadis match again, when Andre on his last leg was able to take out the young man at the time from Cyprus, which he wasn't expected to do. This is probably on an elevated scale. I think Serena's influence and popularity even surpasses that of Andre. And to take out the world number 2. I mean, look, at the same time, we knew that Kontaveit wasn't quite playing like the world number 2, but you had a couple of factors coming in. One, I think Serena really feels a weight lifted off her shoulder. She got the win over Danka Kovinic. She got the tribute, the celebration. She won in front of all of her friends, which include many very powerful and famous people. And I just think she came into that match feeling, in her words, like she already won. Like she was going to be good regardless of the outcome. And we know how much that helps tennis players. It lets you play so much better when you feel a sense of freedom. And then you had the crowd, which I think not only lifted Serena, but rattled Kontaveit.
Yeah, and you could see it. I mean, you could hear her in the press conference. She seemed a little bit off by it. Understandably, you're playing an all-time great, the all-time great at home. And the tribute, you said, it's true. If they play that video after a loss, it's not the same. Like, it's just not. That's just how it works. So to have her get that video after a win is huge. And we mentioned the draw kind of being favorable. Ajla Tomljanovic next. There's opportunities there. But the one thing I don't want to do, Gil, is just start glossing over any of these women in this draw, especially given how women's tennis has been. But yeah, you have to feel like Serena at this point is confident. She's going to have crowd support. The concerns that I have would just be recovery, having gone late into a tournament, which she hasn't done in over a year now. But it was very, very cool to see her out there enjoying tennis. And I think that's going to be the takeaway from this U.S. Open, whether it ends with one match or a couple more, that she's out there having fun, and the crowd is just very appreciative of seeing her one last time.
Yeah, the scenes have been remarkable, Mitch. I got to be in the building for the Kovinic match at the beginning and the end. And when she walked out, it looked like a Beyonce concert with almost everyone filming it on their phones. And like when you see 15,000 people all with their phones out at the same time, there's a certain look to that. And then the standing on match point is something I've also never, ever seen. And I talked to Steve Flink and Joel Drucker, who writes for tennis.com. Steve Flink, a Hall of Famer. These guys have been covering the sport for combined, I think, 80 plus years. Both of them told me they had never seen an entire stadium stand for match point. So the energy that this farewell run is providing is literally unprecedented.
Before we move on to some other players, what are your thoughts on, for the first time ever, we're going to have doubles in the night session at Ash? I mean,
love it.
There ever was a time, this would be the time. Serena and Venus playing together for the last one.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that Serena also kind of has 2 lives here, because if she loses in the singles or the doubles, she'll have the other one, which I think is a nice cushion for her. Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. I think the fans are going to eat that up. That's what scheduling is really all about. You have to figure out, what do the fans want, and whatever match is in the most demand, you put that on Ash. Simple as that. So I think that the tournament organizers are going to be proven correct with this move to put Serena and Venus on Ash. I'm a little bit more concerned about Kyrgios and Kokkinakis on Armstrong for the night session. I don't know that that's going to play out like it did in Australia, but all
Yeah.
we can do is wait and see.
Well, it's going to be good for the singles match on that same court. We won't be going as long with doubles being a little shorter. So that's been not as big of an issue. We saw it last night with Armstrong going well into the night, just well into the night. More on this in a little bit when we talk about women's tennis, but I did want to get your thoughts as the host of 3, the podcast on the Tennis Channel Network. Rafael Nadal's early form. He wins in 4 sets. It wasn't great. He lost the first set and, always has been rounding into form. But I think the fair question, Gill, is he hasn't had match play. He's coming off of injuries, just 2 hardcourt matches under his belt now this season. How do you assess his form and his ability or maybe inability going forward in this tournament to ramp up as he tries to get major number 23?
It's going to have to get better, but the draw is there for him for that to happen. I mean, Fabio Fognini in the next round, that is a name that certainly scares fans of Rafa Nadal based on the history. There was even, I think in 2014, Fognini coming back from down 2 sets to love against Nadal. But Fognini is not the same player. He's fallen outside of the top 50. He's, I've seen him in a lot of qualifying draws recently just to kind of give some perspective on where he's at in his career right now. He comes off of a 5-setter over Aslan Karatsev. I still feel like if Rafa gets to a point where he is serving at 100%, then it is actually his tournament to lose, especially because Daniil Medvedev might have to overcome certain hurdles that could prove to be very, very difficult. If you look at especially a Nick Kyrgios who loses in his section, perhaps a red-hot Pablo Carreño Busta.
It's a good point. I think the serve is something to monitor, something with Rafa, who oddly enough, I think on match points, he's hitting hot shots better than anybody, which is funny to see. Medvedev's somebody that has been going under the radar, which is kind of crazy because all he's done at the U.S. Open and really hardcourt majors is go deep into the tournament. I would say that if Medvedev gets to the final, that probably is proof that he's playing in pretty good form, having overcome that draw. But yeah, Rafa's thing has always been fitness, how he is overcoming the injury and just staying healthy. But I'm with you. The draw is, it's tailor-made for him. Like he couldn't have dreamed of a better one, I would think.
Yeah, that's how I see it. That's how I think most people saw it as soon as the draw came out, really. Now, Cam Norrie, he hasn't really been able to show up against the elite of the elite at slams. Those matches generally haven't been competitive. At the same time, his results overall suggest that you should never count him out. So that's the potential quarterfinal. But again, I think one match at a time. Second round, Fognini. That's a good spot for Rafa. And again, we've seen this major format: best out of 5 sets, days off in between, 128 draw, 32 seeds. If there is a format that allows you to play into form, it is this one.
Well, we know Fabio's a little crazy too, so we'll see. That could help him. That could hurt him in the match coming up. Gill Gross here on Tennis Channel Inside In, just going around the grounds with some thoughts on some players, some good, some bad. How about this for some good? Jack Draper is on the scene and emerged as one of the next guys. And I'll be honest, Gill, I thought he had a chance to beat Felix, but to do it in straight sets and to serve at the clip that he has, very impressed with how he's kind of rose up and over time this year. Not flash in the pan, has beaten good players, but also his serve is becoming one of the premier ones in the game. And I'll flip it on you. Are you shocked at how Draper's put himself in this position and how fastly he's done it?
Yes and no. I think the one thing outside of all of his technical capabilities that has stood out about Draper is this man loves the bright lights. Some young players shrink under him, and he does not. And that's the first thing I said when the first match I ever saw him play was against Djokovic center court at Wimbledon. I believe on day 1 of Wimbledon, which is a really nervous position to be. He won the first set in that match. And I was like, whoa, okay. This guy really, he likes this. He loves this. And then he beat Stefanos Tsitsipas, night session in Canada a couple weeks ago, earlier this month. And now he's again under the lights against the number 6 seed and he really outclassed Felix in this match, who was struggling with his backhand. But I love that Draper is a baller in the big matches. He brings his best. He relishes those moments. And Felix, I think he came in with a lot of stress about that came from defending those semifinal points.
Yeah, well, the one thing on Draper I will say is that you hit the nail on the head. He is very comfortable in these situations. He's comfortable dealing with adversity and the ups and downs that come with the big match. And I think he is here to stay. We'll see what the ceiling is. We're going to have to see more tennis and more situations there. Felix's situation is a little different, obviously, and it's unfortunate where he's at. If we would have had this conversation after Australia, we would have looked at one of the most consistent major performers in at least the last year. Since then, it hasn't been good, and there's different ways to point to it. There's matchups. Querrey at Wimbledon's a tough draw. This isn't a great draw either, but he's just not getting it done in these big stages at this point. Do you think it's technical? Do you think, like as you said, the pressure might be something? Is there areas in his game that he can improve? Why is Felix in a rough patch right now?
I used to think it was technical. With his second serve not having a kick serve, struggling to get it to the righty backhand, not really being malleable with his court position, not being able to be comfortable moving forward, not having good shot selection, going for too much on his forehand, his backhand being rather pedestrian. I used to look at a lot of things, and I just thought Felix needed to improve some things technically. At this point, I don't feel that way anymore because I saw the full array earlier this year, Mitch, which is exactly what you alluded to. I saw his movement get so much better, being willing to defend, making good decisions in baseline rallies, getting consistent with his forehand. I've seen all these things, and now I do think it's mental. I think he needs to look at how he carries himself on court and start to think about if there are better ways that he can get himself out of a funk. Because Mitch, he is the nicest guy in the world. He is the classiest guy in the world. It feels like sometimes he curls into a ball and shells up and puts all of his emotions inside of him and doesn't let them out. And he gets this deer in the headlight look. You don't see any negativity out of him. You don't see any positivity out of him. He becomes desolate. And that is what we saw in a high pressure situation against Casper Ruud in Canada.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, when he was playing in front of, his home crowd in Montreal. And I thought we saw it again last night. I think Felix needs an outlet. I'm not a sports psychologist, but I know that there can be some value in letting go some of your emotion. And he doesn't need to become a racket smasher, but do something, yell, squeeze the tennis ball, let it out in some kind of way, because whatever he's doing now isn't really working.
It's also so fascinating and shows you how much the pressure is on some of these players that we anoint to be the next guy. And how on the flip side, a guy like Draper, or even look at someone doing well in this tournament so far, Matteo Berrettini, kind of came onto the scene without the hype of other players in their era. Felix has been anointed, deservedly so, for everything you said, skill-wise, how classy he is as one of the next guys, and it's just been a lot of pressure. So we hope that Felix can turn it around. It was a disappointing end to his major season. A lot of tennis left for him. I hate to bring it up too as we keep on the disappointment train, but Gill, what is going on with Stefanos Tsitsipas? Because there's something clearly wrong here. And I'll credit you. You were one of the first people on the train at the Cincinnati final. It's a close match. George is playing well. Good to see him back in the mix. But 2 points, you heard Querrey on the broadcast. Tsitsipas was checking out in the middle of a Masters final. And you see how he starts this match. And I don't know tactically what's going on. I know he can play smart tennis, but sometimes it's like he mentally checks out. So I guess I go back to the question, what's going on with Tsitsipas?
Yeah, I don't know. It does appear that mentally he has been really all over the place, up and down, in and out. He's just not. I mean, look, tennis is an exercise of focus. Can you focus for 3 hours or more And lately Tsitsipas has looked, very distracted. He has looked at his equipment at times. He has looked at his elbow at times. He has looked to his father at times. Um, he is making silly decisions at times with passing shots, trying to go through the middle, which I take no moral issue with. But also, he's losing most of these points. There have been many occasions, Draper, Kyrgios at Wimbledon, Draper in Canada, where he's losing points where he has a sitter because he's trying to hit the ball at his opponent. Where again, it's not that I'm clutching my pearls and saying this is dangerous. It's that why are you losing these points? Just make a better decision here. And then yes, Mitch, there was the effort in the Turich match where it felt very clear something bad would happen, and you would see the next couple points he would sulk and his effort level would go down. So yeah, Tsitsipas is someone who generally, as a young player, has been a very hardened competitor when it comes to effort level. And we haven't quite seen that recently.
I look back to the Roger Federer match in Australia where he was pretty much on the scene, beating him in that major and all the break points that he saved against Federer. And I use that as a point of reference, Gil, because this is more frustrating to me than I would even say Nick Kyrgios at his low moments, because Tsitsipas has proven that he is in great shape, that he can play smart tennis. His arrogance on the court has helped him, like how confident he is. I almost think at this point, the coaching situation, the dad relationship, that's almost like a cop-out. A lot of players work with their parents and have ups and downs, and there is no excuse for not putting forth great effort. And if you want to be one of the best, which I think, I mean, I'm still a fan of his game and what he can do and his potential, but you can't have these dips. You can't, I mean, Rafa, Joker, Federer, and not just, you can even go to Murray and guys that have won majors like Stan and even Cilic. Like, you cannot have these dips where you just check out at any moment in a major match, especially. And we've seen it time and time again. I think, he has always marched to a different beat, to his own drum, so to speak. But there is something here that's more than tennis that's affecting him, because the game has always been there. And that's where I'm worried, because he's starting to teeter more than I've seen him before.
I agree. It is worrisome because it's a regression. You're right. That's the concern, is that it wasn't, he's not a young player who's always had this. It used to be a lot more steady. So I'm not sure what's happening, but you make a super interesting point about the father-son relationship. And I think there's a ton of validity to it. The only thing that might make this different is just how active it is. Apostolos is literally in Stefanos's ear now all the time. I was live at the match. I was watching the dynamic between those two. Stefanos is not allowed to just play on his own. Apostolo, there is constantly interaction. And you just have to wonder, what is the effect of that? Is that taking Stefanos away from the moment? Is he feeling a certain way about the things that he is hearing from his box? And, is that causing the certain, emotional ups and downs? I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see. A lot more tennis to monitor in his career, but we just hope it gets better. Let's try to focus on some positives now. One of those being Andy Murray. He's won 2 matches, keeps going. I think the Andy Murray experience now, Gil, is let's just stay on the court as long as possible, which isn't going to help him as he goes forward. He is a fighter. Mark Petchey told me he'll be fighting the rest of his life in some way, shape, or form. But it is always inspiring to see Murray out here battling, given what's happened through the years. And that second round match, he was against it in the heat, everything. Talk about not wanting to check out. There were tons of opportunities to do so, but Andy Murray still keeping it going and still proving that he's a dangerous out in a best of 5 match.
Yeah, Sarundalo in the first round was, someone I thought it was going to be difficult for him, and he ended up really just maneuvering the ball around the court, and Sarundalo was forced to hit a lot of backhands, and it was a great match from Andy, and then he gets through Nava in the second round. The Berrettini matchup is fascinating because traditionally it should be a great matchup for Andy because he's got the great return, and he can get into those rallies with Berrettini, which is where he's vulnerable. But the question is, where is the return really at? I mean, Mitch, he still doesn't have big weapons, so
Mm.
it's always going to be a fight. I think he's tried to transform himself into a guy with a point finishing forehand or
Yeah.
a bigger first serve or whatever it be. It's just not happening for him. So, Andy is going to be Andy, uh, grinder Andy. And I mean that term, I use that term affectionately. It looks like for the foreseeable future.
Well, this is an opportunity, and especially for Berrettini. With Fritz and Tsitsipas out, the quarter kind of looks at his realm. He's made the semis before, wasn't able to play Wimbledon, but he's somebody that's very dangerous, and Murray is going to fight, so that's a good one. And I do have to give a shout out to, on the positive side, Brandon Holt for knocking off Taylor Fritz after going through qualifying. Just an awesome moment for him. And Tracy Austin, the whole family, everybody proud of him. But I brought up the point the other day, Gil. I think this was rooted in the fact that Holt knew Taylor Fritz, grew up with him. I don't think he was necessarily afraid of taking the court with him. There was that mental block that a young player has with taking the court with an established guy. But when it's still relatively your peer, I think that kind of keeps the confidence there.
Yeah, when there's such a surprising result as that was, you do look to some of those dynamics. And obviously the fact that they grew up together was was possibly played in there. I mean, Taylor did not play up to his standards,
Right.
and clearly he had put a lot of pressure on himself. What he said after the match was certainly noteworthy. I haven't. You rarely see a player that honest. He said that he was embarrassed. He said that he can't play a match like that. He said that he basically scolded himself for his performance. So yeah, I couldn't catch the match. Judy called on other courts, but that was a really surprising result. I had Fritz in the final.
Oof. Well, you can't have a perfect bracket every year, but I do think there's something to be said about the pressure that you get to a top 10 seed, you're at your home slam. It's tough. Before we transition to the women's side, again, shout out to Brandon Hold on making it through qualifying and doing that. If I'd ask you right now, which American man goes the furthest in this tournament, who would it be? With Brooksby up a set right now into the second, I'm sure.
Sure. Okay, well, I haven't studied the draw in preparation for this question, but Tommy Paul might be off to the races here.
That's the answer, I think, because the Court of Paul match was setting up to where whoever won that match had a golden opportunity. I do think it's Tommy Paul. Francis would, I think, get Rafa if he gets to round 4. Is it Rafa? I think so. That would be kind of tough, but I think the quarterfinals are in play for Paul certainly. Chris Eubanks gets center today. That's a tough one, but again, just to get this far is great. And Brooksby is still everybody's least favorite player to play for, at least for the first time. Because the first time you play Brooksby, you're just like, what the heck is this? Is this even tennis?
Yeah, totally. It's Brooksby's had a strange season. He's looked great. He's looked awful, and there hasn't been a lot in between.
Everybody hates him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe not the fans, but in the locker room.
Yeah.
I really do think. I do think that if Brooksby has a lot of success, he will be very much embraced in New York, and I think he was a little bit last year. It's just going to be interesting to see in best of 5 if he's ready to really make a run physically, because last year he broke down. By the time he got to Djokovic, he was injured, and I wonder if this best of 5 set format isn't going to suit him well because of just how physical he needs to play.
I agree with that. And I'm a fan of anybody that's different, that plays a different style. You don't have to be the most liked. And I mean, it's clear that I think within the American circle, a lot of these players are friendly with each other, came up together. Brooksby's the outsider. He plays that role well. It's good to have another variable there. Now we transition to the women's side of the U.S. Open with Gill Gross here on Tennis Channel Inside In. A lot of different players to look at. Coco Gauff came into this tournament as the second favorite with a favorable draw that's even more so. And she also cracked 128-mile-an-hour serve the other day. So she's coming for Serena's record. I think it's smart money that she will eventually have the fastest serve in women's tennis. But the Coco side of things is a lot of pressure, but a player that definitely at her age seems capable of handling the moment. So Gill, I would transition it to, she might have issues with actually technically with her serve, with the forehand at times, but I don't doubt for a second that she can't handle the expectations that have been placed on her.
Oh my goodness. I could not agree with you more. She has like the best head on her shoulders that you could possibly ask for. And like I would even include Serena and Venus in that. Like she loses well, she wins well, she competes well, she handles pressure, she's cerebral. Um, Again, yeah, it's like it's really about matchups with her, and we talk about the forehand. I know that you and I have discussed that. If it can be rushed or if she does happen to get tight, um, there can be issues with that side. But yeah, it just feels like Coco is ready, and it's an interesting passing of the torch here because this is by far the U.S. Open where Coco comes in as the best version of herself and actually a title contender for the first time. I mean, last year she was seeded for the first time at the U.S. Open, and but there was not any kind of expectation that she could contend for the title. Now, as Serena says goodbye, Coco is emerges as a title contender.
She really does, and she stays in the moment. Just to add on what you were saying, Ruth yesterday serving for the second set. A lot of players would maybe get down, get frustrated. Coco breaks back, wins it in a tight tiebreaker. She deserves everything that she's been lauded on, and all the expectations and praise that have been heaped on her. It's fun to see. I had to do a score check before we go into this, but Iga's up a break in the first against Sloane, 4-2 as we record this. And, I think a lot of the reports of her demise have been a little exaggerated there. I think this is the case, Gill, where I think that she is so dominant on clay that it's unfair to heap that same, expectation on her hardcourt performance. Yes, she deserves to be the favorite. Yes, I think she's still the player to beat in this draw. And also, yes, she's more vulnerable here than she would be on clay. We'll see when she gets tested. I still think she had a bad day with the bad conditions at Wimbledon. I don't know mentally that she faltered. I think Iga's game is going to do very well in this tournament, and I would expect her to keep winning matches. Sloane's tricky, but we'll see after this how she does. But I think Iga's still right where she needs to be, and right where she deserves to be.
Yeah, in fairness, I know this feels like a while ago, Mitch, but she won Doha, she won Indian Wells, she won Miami. So I think there was evidence that maybe she would just keep dominating on the hard court, and that didn't happen. I think with Iga, I still haven't seen her. So when she's lost, it's been one of two things. It's either been someone is exceptional at attacking her serve, and her second serve at that. And I think there's only a handful of players who can do that. We saw an Ostapenko and a Danielle Collins, for example. Very few players who just have that perfect ability to just put Iga on her heels on off of her second serve, right? So that's one. Her other losses this year, I think you throw the Cornet Wimbledon loss in there, for example. And by the way, Caroline Garcia, another brilliant second serve attacker. The other way that she's lost is just a crisis of confidence, where she just doesn't feel comfortable hitting her forehand like she needs to. But I have not seen Iga in full flight, confident, secure mentally, against a player who is not an incredible ball, incredible ball basher, powerful second serve attacker. I haven't seen her lose. So I think she is rightfully so the favorite, and I would agree to say that her vulnerability can be overstated when she complains about the balls, that she didn't win any of the lead ups. I think all of that is true.
Yeah, I mean, everybody loses matches like that. That's like you're not going to win every single match. So when one player loses, it's like, oh, what's happening here? I think it's a little overstated, but we'll see. I mean, this tournament does have no shortage of contenders. We've seen some walkovers too. I just want to mention Kvitova wins in a walkover. Holger Rune over Isner with the wrist injury walkover. But nice little payout for a day of not having to work to just get that second round walkover win. More to kind of recap. We saw a run of defending champions knocked out early. Naomi Osaka out, Emma Raducanu out as well. Interesting timing to say the least with some of this. And I do wonder, in Emma's case, I think it's just about getting experience and getting repetition, and Querrey is just, such a consummate professional. I'm a little concerned with Naomi's future. I know Collins is a game player in these big tournaments, but Naomi just seems to be, I don't think it's any one thing, Gill. I think that there is slightly less across the board in the things that made her great when she was collecting all these majors.
Yeah. No matter how much talent you have, you have to put in the hard hours. You have to pay your dues. You have to keep playing tournaments. You have to keep making yourself better. The game moves forward with or without you. You have to be in a good place mentally, which I know she continues to say she is, but I just don't know that we're seeing that. She's looked quite ordinary. I think that is the number one thing that has been kind of so strange. I mean, ever since Miami, it's not that she has been completely off the tour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for a while, it's like Naomi's either not playing or she's winning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Winning, not playing. Winning, not playing. Now we've seen her kind of play and not win. And that we're not used to seeing whatsoever. And it's just gonna, look, the talent is 100% a proven commodity, and it's there. But she is gonna need to commit herself fully once again and start to, I don't know. Is there a killer instinct missing? Do you see any of that?
Well, and I watched this match start to finish, and Killer Instinct's tough. I'm not, inside her head. I don't know exactly, but I will say this: tactically, there needs to be improvement. There needs to be, on a match-to-match basis, tactics that you follow and everything. And that, I would say that in that case, she kept serving her second serve to Collins' backhand and was getting crushed by it time and time again. Now, one match, okay, you're off, but you got to make that adjustment. And I know she's made changes with her team. She's back working with her dad now, got rid of her coach that she'd worked with for the last two majors. Killer instinct, maybe, but also just the fact that I don't think that she's strategically attacking these matches from a place that you stand. And you brought up a good point about evolving and getting better. Rafael Nadal getting into serve and volley at his stage in the game. I mean, Djokovic, they're all adding something to their game. I think you can't rest on what got you to the dance. Serena Williams was great at that too. You have to constantly be improving and adjusting to the competition that's out for you, because these players want the same thing that you want. They're not just going to give you another major.
Yeah, that's the most remarkable thing about the big three. It has been how they have adapted and continuously improved. They've all, pushed each other forward. And yeah, certainly I'm seeing kind of the same Naomi that we saw early on. And, tactically, yeah, that's a great point, because with Collins, that's a big one. That backhand return is absolutely deadly, and you have to try to avoid it. And yeah, she was 4 for 20. The second serve stats, I think they were awful. I'm forgetting. I had the number in my head.
It was
and
bad.
lost
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was really, really bad.
I think they are correctable. I don't want to, you don't want to write off that what we're seeing isn't fixable, but there's no guarantee it will be fixed. So that's where we're at, where it's like,
I agree.
She's not clearly not the same player. She still has a lot of the ingredients there, but she's got to, reinvest in everything. And another player, just to kind of mention briefly too, it's been a rough year at the majors from Maria Sakkari. Came in with a high seed, out in the second round. Her major performances this year were fourth, second, third, and second at the majors. A player that's been open about the expectations of being a top 10 player and having to play with that weight on your shoulder, top 5 player now. I feel like she overhits in these big moments. It happened time and time again, and she was in control up a set, overhit, and then suddenly you're shaking hands and out of another major.
Yeah, it was at that match the forehand failed her. She missed a lot of forehands, and the turning point also included a missed overhead. There were just where her feet stopped. Sakkari, clearly it's about nerves. It's always about nerves. She is so good offensively and defensively, and she has the serve, and she never gets tired. I mean, I absolutely love the attributes she brings to the court. Maybe she just needs, she's dropped her semifinals points here. She's going to drop in the rankings. Maybe she is a little bit like a Muguruza, and she needs to drop down, allow herself to kind of become the forgotten woman again and rise back up. Maybe that will be kind of the cycle of life for Maria, because when there's a lot of pressure and expectation on herself, clearly she struggles to perform to her peak. And you look at her semifinals kind of slump that she went in, right, which was across all tournaments. That was an example where she got in her head. She was like, crap, I've lost 4 semifinals in a row. Oh no, I've lost 7 semifinals in a row. I've lost 9. I've lost 2. And it just really, really snowballed
Yeah.
and snowballed and snowballed. She's only got one career title, and she's a better player than that. She's a much better player than that. Um, I think that it will really help her. I expect her to rise up once again and go on a big run and show her best tennis at some point. But yeah, I think it might take everyone kind of forgetting that she is a top player for that to happen again.
Yeah, one thing women's tennis has kind of taught us is that the number next to your name really, or lack thereof, really doesn't matter like it did in the past or it does in the men's game. But I agree. I think she's got the talent, the tools to still keep it going. And we'll be adding to that title, adding to that single title in her collection very soon. Before we wrap this up, any women's players outside of Coco, outside of Iga that you think could be real contenders here? I'm going to have you call your shot that they could go on runs. And who do you think on the women's side could make some noise, get to a quarter, a semi, maybe even beyond?
Ludmila Samsonova is on an absurd level right now.
Gamblers are just all over her, by the way. She is just giving money to everybody because she's not only winning, Gil, she's covering her spreads too.
She is, I mean, I've always loved her serve, and she's always been a really good athlete, which has led you to believe, okay, you have this big serve, this big forehand, you are a great athlete. You should be able to break serve sometimes. You should be able to win some rallies. Only now is she starting to believe in herself and accepting the longer rallies. Mitch, her serve stats are incredible, and they always have been. She holds at a top 10 rate. She leads the WTA Tour in second serve points won. The difference since since grass court season, where she couldn't play Wimbledon and didn't play a match for 41 days, hasn't lost since, by the way. 12 match win streak, by the way. The difference is that she's now breaking serve because she's just hanging in rallies, which she can do because she's a great athlete. So I'm all in on Ludmila Samsonova.
I got one for you too, and I know you're high on her as well. Qinwen Zhang is somebody that I think will be a top 10. I mean, I think we're in agreement here. This is a player that obviously from China we've seen a certain type of player that has risen up the ranking. She seems like she's a little different. The power's there, but the Ostapenko match round 1, which is a tricky draw, you're dealing with a lot when you play Elena Ostapenko. She fought through it. She made waves there. I think she's somebody. Big match with Potapova today. She's someone that I have on my list as well. I also think you can't count out in this tournament Madison Keys. She survives Camilla Giorgi yesterday. And, the match with Coco, I know it's a tough matchup, but I think that this is probably going to be Coco's toughest test going forward for the next couple matches. So those are two that I'm looking at to kind of see their level. Jessie Pegula, the top American, or with Coco, I guess I should say. She's somebody that I think we should monitor as well. But those are the names that jump out from the less than top favorites.
Yeah, fully agree about Qinwen Zhang. Um, I feel bad because I don't think we mentioned Wang Xiu, who beat Maria Sakkari.
Yeah.
She's not ready yet. So she won't be lifting the trophy at the end. Although you would have said that last year about both of our finalists. But she's really, really great too. She's smart, great forehand, great serve. Keys is super comfortable, very confident right now. She is how about someone who's enjoying herself at the moment? She seems very just at ease and at peace and letting her weapons fly and playing smart. I think that's a good list, and then
Yeah.
Pegula is just steady as a rock. I don't know that she has the firepower to take out a top player on their day, but she certainly has what it takes to take advantage of a top player
Hmm.
off their day. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating women's tournament. I think it's been a great event so far.
Yeah.
I'm,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
looking forward to how it plays out.
Tomorrow's women's slate is just phenomenal with the Serena Tomljanovic match, but you also have Andreescu, Garcia, Rogers, Jabeur, and Coco and Keys. I mean, that's just for third round action. You can't get much better than that. Gill Gross, this has been a blast. Very last thing, have to get your thoughts on other retirements that don't have the weight and the magnitude of Serena Williams, obviously, but we are saying goodbye to Sam Querrey and Andrea Petkovic, two players that were consummate professionals, by all accounts, well respected and well liked in their respective locker rooms. What are your thoughts on the end of the playing careers of those two, Querrey and Petkovic?
Querrey, he was a really good big match player. He always had a great attitude, a big game. His win over Djokovic at Wimbledon, very memorable. Never kind of got all that. Never brought too much attention to himself. With off the court, at least intentionally, you did have the Russia thing that he did not ask for that situation to happen. So Querrey is certainly one I'll miss, and Petkovic has had such a winding career. Lots of interests off the court, so I don't think we'll be hearing the last of her. She was a real, intellectual. She had really great peaks as well, and it's always a part of the U.S. Open. Some players saying, "Okay, it's my last major. It's the end of the road. I don't want to play, in the fall if there's not any good reason for me to do so." I'm glad that Sam and Petkovic got a nice send off here.
Two polar opposites, by the way, to just be announcing this retirement in terms of personality. But
Yeah.
Sam Querrey didn't, held the mantle for American tennis a little bit as best he could. Back-to-back wins over number one in consecutive years at Wimbledon. Truly remarkable stuff there. And Petkovic just enjoyed it, just enjoyed being a professional, was able to have a life outside the court and got some good results as well as in the top 10. So best wishes to them as they wrap up their more than stellar careers. Gill Gross, this was fun. We can catch you on 3 with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, and also US Open Radio here now in the remaining 2 weeks. What else you got on deck?
Well, once I get back from the tournament on Thursday, I'll have coverage on my YouTube channel, Gill Gross, pre-match coverage, post-match coverage, and all that. But yeah, until then, you can listen to US Open Radio on the app and on satellite radio. I don't remember which channel, but you can check my Twitter feed.
If there would be a shortage of ball boys at the U.S. Open, would you be able to just for one match just resume, or do you need to get trained, stretch a little bit? How's that work?
I've definitely declined athletically, Mitch, from my young years. There's been a decline, but at the same time, I wouldn't rule out a comeback. I'm going to be intentionally vague here.
Okay, still there, still possible, but not out. Intentionally vague, like Serena Williams. That's Gill Gross. Follow him on Twitter. Check out his YouTube page. Gill, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks, Mitch. Always fun.